just cutting time down for people and cutting food budgets down, but also like giving them permission for certain things to be health food has been really great. I've got lots of feedback about that, saying thanks for letting this be health food, and like thanks for making recipes my kids will eat.
Hey everybody, this is Dirty Linen. You're with Dani Valent, and I am thrilled to have your company for what I am sure is going to be a very real, warm and delightful food chat. We are chatting to Catie Gett. Catie is the founder of the Staple Store. She's a naturopath. She's a muesli whisperer, and she is a porridge angel. I was just thinking this morning while getting ready for this chat, as we come into cooler weather, I was thinking about Catie's podge, the wonderful porridge mixes that she used to sell at the Staple Store in Ripponlea. I mean, we love to keep it real on this podcast, so I will also let you in on the knowledge that Catie gave my older daughter her first job, and she also became an apprentice muesli whisperer at the Staple Store when it was a bricks and mortar biz in Ripponlea. Catie has just released the Staple Store Cookbook Volume 1, which I love. I love the intention in that. Catie, my dear friend, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Hey Dani, thanks for having me. This is so awesome. Your kid was one of my favourite stuff ever. Amazing. You did a really good job.
Thank you so much. Well, they're moulded by all the people that come into their life. So thank you for doing your part. The last time I saw you IRL, I was walking past the railway station near my house and heard somebody yell out, "Dani!" And I looked across and there was this strange apparition. There was a person sitting at a random table, like a Bunnings table that you'd brought in to the park, and you had a pile of books and you were doing this impromptu book signing just like out under the sunshine. Yeah, you I guess the point is you do things a little bit differently, don't you?
Yeah, a little bit. That was because we crowdfunded and I wanted to see everyone. And I was like, oh, I'll speak to one of the shops, one of the local shops, because we were in the Ripponlea Strip for so long. And then because I'm a type B personality, I didn't sign anything up in time. So I ended up just going, okay, guys, we're just going to meet at the train station, which is probably, I think, one of the most beautiful train stations in Melbourne. So that's kind of nice anyway. But yeah, it was on a trestle table. And I was signing books on a trestle table in the train station park. Because it was beautiful. Like when we did the crowdfunding for the cookbook, there was so many OG Staple customers that supported it. It was awesome. It was really fun.
All right. Well, let's catch people up with a story, because we're obviously deep in it, and I already know a little bit about you and what you do. But give us the backstory to Staple Store and bring us up to where you are now.
All right. I'll try not to get sidetracked. So I graduated as a naturopath donkeys years ago. I think maybe 15 years ago. I worked in health food shops during that. So I've been in the industry for about 20 years. And I loved community health. I used to work at Carlisle Health Foods years and years ago and Sunnybrook Health Food Shop. And I loved that community wellness where people would come in and they're like, oh, I've got a cold. And you'd be like, oh, that's cool. We'll just take this and this and this. And, they came in with their blood tests and we just were like, oh, that's fine. Like, just take this and speak to your doctor about it, obviously. But anyway, I loved that part, and I loved the most. The thing I loved the most is that people would come back in and they'd be like, "Oh, you helped with our cold," or like everything's worked out really well. Thanks for your advice. And I went into private practice, and I loved being in private practice, but I missed the community health. And so I opened up the Staple Store, and it was only with food. I didn't have any supplements because I was like, I just want to get to the grassroots of wellness and help people fall in love with whole foods and know how to cook them. And I was like, I get to be in there every day and educating people every day on whole food, which is what I loved. And then we were, towards, I don't know, I think probably 4 years ago now, it was during the lockdowns, and I'm a single parent. So I was running a brick and mortar store and single parenting and homeschooling at the same time. It was a very wild time, and it just got too much. And our term was up, and I was like, actually, I'm going to close the store. We had a blast closing the store because there's so many people from all of that time that came along and said goodbye. And then about 2 years later after that, I started selling our products online because lots of people loved them. We sold them in drops. And until the year before last, everything was going okay. We'd done the drops for a couple of years. And it was this one day I was like, the courier hadn't come, and I said to my daughter, jump in the car, we're going to go and deliver these packages. And we were delivering packages, Dani, to like mansions. And I was like, got home and I was like, oh, there's a cost of living crisis. The only people that can afford to support our business were people that had incredible amounts of disposable income. And I just was like, oh, I think I've come so far from where we started, what we wanted to do. And so I was like, I think we've got to close. And so I closed. And later that afternoon, I went for this like really long, like 3-hour walk. And I was like, what would it look like if the Staple Store, we just shut? And one of my girlfriends had been over the week before, and she's another single parent with teenage children. And she said, babes, I was at your house last week. And she's like, I just watched you get a can of beans, like rinse a can of beans, pop in some pasta sauce, some tomato pasta sauce, and put in some spices. And she's like, and then you just made us burrito bowls with the leftovers. She's like, what I need you to do for the next week is, I don't need recipes. I just need you to take photos of what you and Huck eat. I just need inspiration. And she can cook. She's own cafe, like really great cafes in Melbourne. And I was like, okay, oh, this is what I'm meant to do. So yeah, it was like a snap decision where I was like, okay, we've come so far from what we intended to do and where we started. And now we've got to find our way back home. And the last drop hadn't done really well. So many things had gone wrong in it. And I don't know if many people understand that have been in small business, like sometimes it has to get so bad for you to get the message. And we were just like pushing, the proverbial up the hill and just trying to get all the stock sold. And I just was like, no, it's not right anyway. So yeah, it was a snap decision. I was like, this is it. This is our last drop. And we had maybe we were open for maybe 2 more weeks. Then we shut down, and I had 3 months worth of savings to go, okay, so I want to get back into education. It's what I started here for. How do I make this profitable? We've got 3 months. I gave myself 3 months. And then I put up one of my recipes. That was another snap decision. I was like, I keep talking about cost of living crisis and food insecurity. And then I was like, I actually have to put my money where my mouth is. And I pulled my car over and I released the not so dal recipe, which I know you've cooked. And it's just, and it's red split lentils and a bunch of spices, and you put them in your dry store. And when you're ready, you just chuck it into a rice cooker or a Thermomix or a saucepan with a can of tomatoes and water, and then it's ready. And I put that up, and all the OG Staple supporters loved it. It was really fun. And then I was like, a couple of days later, I was like, I don't think people realize you can make 10 of these at once. You could literally have all of your not so dal prepped for the whole year. And so I did a video of that, and then I put it up, and then Jennifer Garner reposted it. So I woke up the next morning, I had 10,000 new followers. That post has almost hit 3 million views. And it was from that post, we got massive reach, but so flooded with so many DMs of people telling us how they were experiencing food insecurity. And I was like, oh, this is full on. And I didn't know the stats. I've got dear friends at work in food security organizations, and I still didn't realize it was everywhere and in places in the world that I just imagined was food secure, and there just wasn't. And I was like, oh, we've got to start working on this. And at that time, I was already working on another business to kind of reimagine naturopathy, so to provide a service that was the bridge between seeing a naturopath for free in a health food shop and the thousands of dollars worth of investment that you need to make to see a naturopath in clinical practice. So I was trying to get that business off the ground. And then I was like, oh my God, I think we need to write this cookbook. So I started writing this cookbook, and it was like to just release all of our commercial recipes that we'd had, locked behind NDAs for years at the shop, and then in contract manufacturing. And then it was like, okay, so this is what we're going to do. And then one night I was like, oh, I'm just going to do the beans and the pasta sauce. I was like, so just so you know, when you're tired, this can be health food. And I just did that, and I stirred it, and I was like, dinner's ready. And I just I cried for about 2 weeks because I had people that were social workers and people were working in assisted living and people with chronic disease that were just like, thank you so much for making this health food. And that kind of changed everything. And it was 3 months before, we were just about to release a crowdfunding then. And then I was like, actually, we need to rewrite this entire cookbook. And so I rewrote the entire cookbook in 10 months to be like as little skill as possible, as little equipment as possible, and making it as affordable as possible. So there's like some OG staple recipes in there that are like definitely not budget friendly, but they're also that a majority of the recipes are just so pared back that we like one of the missions was that they were to be unfubbable. So it meant that people could just there's such a huge margin for error in each of the recipes. So if you're not a seasoned cook, they're really tough to mess up. And that was one of the big purposes of the cookbook. And so and then we crowdfunded it, and Kickstarter said, I was like, I need 50,000. And they were like, don't do that. Like 10,000 maybe is like where this will be successful. And then I was like, it's got to be 50. And they were like, maybe 30. Like, cookbook is not going to hit over 30. And I did the launch, and we raised like half of it in the first 48 hours. It wasn't enough. And so it was a nail biting month going, oh my God, are we actually, I've just not slept for 3 months reading this cookbook, and we're not sure if it's going to fund. And by the end of it, we ended up hitting 70,000. So we made the book a bit bigger and better. And it's been like such a journey. And then we delivered all of them. Sendle managed to lose a lot of them before they went under. So we had to replace all of them and lost a lot of money. And so at the beginning of last year, we lived below the poverty line. And I was like, at the beginning of this year, I was like, oh, I think we're buckling down for another one. But the cookbook's just been so well received. It's been it's really, really phenomenal. And we get to just keep working in this space. And I feel really blessed because I've been able to go out and talk to people about food insecurity from a health perspective. Because food security isn't just like if you have access to food, it's whether you have access to nutritional food. And then by financial means or by physical, just virtue of physical proximity to healthy food.
Wow. It's Catie, what a story. It's so big and there's so much important stuff in there. There are so many things we could home in on, but I would love to just talk about, you mentioned a couple of points where you realized you weren't doing what you wanted to do. You weren't representing yourself authentically. And, to your eternal credit, you recognize that and changed track. I mean, I think, the health food, those words sound pretty simple, but there's so much sort of caught up in that and in the messaging around, what you need to do to be healthy, wellness, aspirational eating. It can go so wrong so hard and create a lot of anxiety. Can you talk about that? How this, rosy, happy idea of healthy eating can turn into a very fraught and anxious space?
Staple really opened. I just wrote about this for Ramona magazine, but it really started when the Instagram wellness bubble was this aspirational bubble was starting. And I didn't mean to step inside this bubble, but I actually had. And it's so problematic because positioning health food to be something that you purchase, and it's not something that is just a right to every human, and that, you know, longevity and health is only for the people that can afford it. And it's simply not true. So one of the parts of the cookbook, it's called hero foods. So I used to give a lecture on this years ago, but it was about the fact that superfoods is a marketing term. It's not a scientific term, and it's designed to make wellness aspirational, and it's outside of just by virtue of being unaffordable by so many people. And so we never in the shop, we never use the word superfood. We always use the term hero food. And hero foods are just, they're financially accessible and they're accessible. So they're things like oats and cinnamon and turmeric and leafy greens and broccoli and tomatoes and carrots. They're things, there's phytochemicals inside of all of those foods that have significant bodies of evidence. And I think this is something, because the industry got co-opted by marketing, it's things that people just don't even realize. Like superfoods in a lot of instances don't actually have strong scientific evidence. And, you know, people were coming into the shop. I remember years ago when quinoa was huge, and they'd be coming in and they'd be like, my kid just won't eat quinoa. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your kid doesn't eat quinoa. It's not part of the food groups. But the industry was just so taken over by like telling you what was healthy and what wasn't healthy. People just got so lost. And I'm like, now I get to turn around and say, you know, one of the best foods for gut health is actually a cold potato, which is $2 a kilo. And so hero foods are based on like, you can eat a volume of these foods that has scientific evidence, that are super accessible and financially accessible. And, you know, then there's no barriers to entry to this type of health. So under each major recipe of the cookbook, there's a hero food section that just is like, this is a hero in this recipe and this is why it's a hero. And I like to talk about it as it being like hero foods as being like health sovereignty, like we get to return this health and well-being back to people, because that's what it started as. It started as a bunch of hippies like sprouting mung beans and just wanting people to eat healthy. And yeah, it doesn't have to come in fancy packaging and gold foil labeling and a significant price tag. And I talk about this as that it's an other, but I was part of it for years. I was like, oh, you know, like in this recipe, you just swap out the plain flour for almond meal, and you just swap out coconut sugar for, you know, instead of using white sugar. And I just realized, and it wasn't until I actually lived below the poverty line last year that I actually realized, when I was standing in the supermarket and I was looking at a kilo bag of chicken nuggets, and I was like, oh, I get it. I get if you have $20 and you know your kids are going to eat it, that's how it's part of your food system. And there's a big problem in Australia when what's accessible is actually ultra processed food. And so I just want to like reduce the barriers of entry to like a healthy meal. So like, and it's not just for people that are below the poverty line. The whole point of the book was to kind of reduce the cognitive noise as well. So just like, how do you get a meal on the table that your kids will eat that, you know, is going to feed your household, even if you're a single, like, and you just get home exhausted and have zero bandwidth for food. We'll just like take that away and make it as simple as possible.
I mean, there's so much humility and vulnerability in this journey that you've taken and shared with your audience. I mean, how does it feel? What's the difference in, you know, how you feel within yourself now that you're doing this type of food and this type of communication around, you know, how to feed your family?
I love it. And there was like, for a long, long time, because I'd accidentally stepped into this aspirational food bubble without meaning to, it was actually like, I talk about it, it was like I was finally invited to the cool table. I was like never cool in school, never cool in high school. And then all of a sudden I was like, you know, like the Insta kids wanted to hang out with me, and I didn't realize how much of my nervous system was like caught up in it. So when I was like, I'm going to write recipes with white sugar and white flour because I want to get people, I want to speak to the people that are eating ultra processed foods, and I want to get them to start cooking in their own homes and, you know, make them know that it's easy and that it's accessible so that they don't feel like they're left out of this wellness conversation. Because I think like when we talk about like swapping this for that, and I just didn't realize that I was, you know, talking to such a little part of the population. And the reason why, you know, this is how the echo chambers work. Like everyone was like, oh, we want more of this. We want more of this. And I just realized that I was speaking into a room that I love and was amazing and supported my business for so long. But I started to speak to like the other 97%. Like I started so that I could make wellness appropriate for everybody. And so like I was speaking to someone a little while ago, and I was like, my books are really political. And they're like, what? And I'm like, it's really political. It's really political for a naturopath to write a recipe with these things in there, which like with partially processed foods, like there's a whole chunk in there where I'm like, use pasta sauce. The reason you use pasta sauce is because it's already like, it means you don't have to go buy onions, garlic, basil, you tomato paste, everything you can jar, and the fresh tomatoes, you can just like open the jar of pasta sauce. And not only is it often a lot cheaper, but it saves half an hour of cooking time. And I was like, as a naturopath, I was like, I'm going to get kicked off the cool kids table. And I was really scared. And now I just don't care. I don't care. I'm like, I don't really care. Like I was like, if this is not the brand of wellness that you want to be associated with anymore, that's okay. I'm not here. You guys are cool. You've got this. Like you've been swapping almond milk for like white flour for almond milk for years. And there are so many creators that like will speak to you. I'm just not there for you anymore. Like I'm here to just like, I just want someone with their last $5 to go, I could make a cake. I could do this. Like, let's do this. And and that's where I am now. And it was really scary. I didn't realize how scared I was going to be to break out of it. And because there's been a lot of stuff that's gone in the wellness industry in the past, like probably like 5 years, where I was just like, is anyone else uncomfortable by what the wellness industry is now? I was looking around and it just felt like no one was. That's why one of the big reasons I left the shop, I left the brick and mortar. And then again, the same reason why I left the online business, because I'm like, but then the best thing, Dani, is that when you leave, you realize there's so many people that were just like, dude, like, yeah, like we're getting the same memos and looking the same, like around the Christmas table, the uncomfortable thing that our uncles just said, going, what is going on? So it's great. And I feel, I think last year for me was a really tough year, and I'm so glad I had it because I didn't realize how damaging and ableist and elitist the industry that I was part of had become. And so like having to stretch a 3-month budget for 12 months was the best thing that ever happened, because I got to live it, and I got to understand when I was writing this cookbook, like what the barriers were and how I think because I didn't realize that I'd lived under the poverty line until I would like heard Jess Hill say something. She was talking about single parent households, and that like it's like, Dani, I think I meant to have my stats in front of me and I didn't have them, but I think it's like over 60% of single income families that experience food insecurity. And I was like, and then when I went and looked, I was like, we've been living below this line for the year, below the poverty line. And I was like, the one thing that made me not uncomfortable in that situation is because I can cook. So we could in my house, we could live off a $30 food budget, but that's because I come from a foodie family. Like cooking is just part of my DNA. So if I found a box of like green beans, like a 5 kilo box of green beans at the market for $5, I knew I'd be making meals for a month from that. And that's when I realized that was my privilege, is that I could cook. And that's why I wanted to bring it to as many people as possible. So it's really fun.
It sounds like a relief, honestly, to find this strand for yourself and to, just like leave the cool kids table because, You don't need to be there. It's probably creates a lot of anxiety.
Yeah. For years, it created anxiety that I didn't know I had. And I'm so glad. There's so many cool people at the other on the other side too, though.
Totally. Reframing cool is what life is often all about. I want to talk about time because I feel like that's something that's often left out of the food insecurity conversation. And you know, there's so much guilt around how, you know, people feed a household. You know, are you doing it right? Are you feeding your kids the wrong things? How bad should you be feeling that, you know, you're reaching for those chicken nuggets? Like guilt is such a devastating feeling, especially when it's around something so fundamental as food and feeding kids. Like you really don't want anything more for your children than, you know, that you can shelter them and feed them well. But I think time is often left out of that conversation. You know, when people are, you know, working at 2 or 3 different jobs, when they have to travel a long way to work or to, you know, for their kids to travel to and from school, I think that's, you can understand why the drive-through is, you know, people turn into the drive-through without or perhaps even deciding to. It's, you know, it's late, everyone's hungry. What do you do? And I love this idea of, you know, giving people permission to buy pasta sauce. But I mean, what other kinds of time hacks have you shared in the book?
So I think my potato one is my favorite. There's like two double page spreads on potatoes. And the idea is that you cook. Well, the first idea is that a cooked and cooled potato is a hero food. So it contains like resistant starch, and resistant starch is, I'll explain it in a really quick nutshell, but it means that your body isn't able to digest it. So it goes down into your colon, and then the bacteria digest it, and the bacteria then create something called short chain fatty acids. And short chain fatty acids are really essential for overall health, but particularly colon health, but also metabolic health, and, you know, assisting in things like diabetes and even mood. So this is my favorite hack, and one that we do in our house, which is to boil 1/2 kilo of potatoes for every person in your household. And, you know, often you can buy potatoes for $2 a kilo, so that's $1 a head. And then you have parboiled potatoes ready to go, and you can turn them into anything. So there's this curry that I make, which is a jar of pasta sauce, potatoes chopped up, and then you put in garam masala and turmeric, and then finish it off with coconut cream. And it's really yum. It's really good. And that takes like 5 minutes to make. And then you can like make up a quick mash. You can make a potato salad. You can quickly make wedges or fries or whatever. And they're on the side. And, you know, like, even though they're super cheap and they're potatoes, we've been led to believe for a very long time are just empty carbohydrates, which they're not, because they contain like quite a bit of protein. And like, I like to always shock people with like a large potato contains as much protein as a small egg. And people are like, what? But it's just empty carbs. And like, it's not empty carbs. And on top of that, if you look at the satiety index, which is like how full you feel from certain foods, potatoes are number one food. So you can eat 100 grams of potatoes and 100 grams of like red meat that we've been led to believe is, you know, high in protein and great for satiety. Potatoes will win. They're the number one food that's been tested by I think it's the University of New South Wales. So there's that. And then, yeah, you can quickly whip up meals. So you can quickly whip up a stew or a curry, or, you know, bulk out something that you've already got with potatoes that are already ready to go. So that like, and also I love to make leftovers, and then you slice up the potatoes and just toss them in some oil and some cheese, and you put them on the top of leftovers. So like, even like leftover dal or curry, or like if you made a stew the night before, you just top it up and put it in the oven, and everyone loves the pie, and that'll take like 20 minutes. So that's one of my favorite ones. My other ones is like I have a lot of dry store recipes in the cookbook, which are essentially our commercial recipes that we sold for years. So they've been tested like thousands of times across hundreds of households. But they're like, there's 3 lentil mixes. So there's one that's inspired by like Indian flavors. There's one inspired by South American flavors, and there's one that's inspired by Italian flavors. And so they're just dry lentils with spices. You just pop it in your cupboard. And then when you're like, oh, what are we going to eat? You just chuck it in. Like, my favorite is that they'll cook in a rice cooker, and you just put them in with the water and the tomatoes and press go, and then come back 25 minutes and dinner's ready. And you can just eat it like that by itself. It's quite a nutritious meal. You can complete the protein by having it with like a piece of bread or like a piece of toast or crackers or rice. And it's just, that's so simple. I love them. And then the cake, the cake portion of the cookbook is actually cake mixes. And one of my favorites is you make this cake mix. It costs 67 cents to make. And then it iterates into 10 other different recipes. So you can make cookies and pikelets, and the funnest emails I get is from that chapter, because it's been the gateway for a lot of children to start cooking. So the parents will make all of these cake mixes up at the beginning of the school holidays. Like I got so many videos of like them all set up in people's kitchens, and then their kids would just cook all school holidays all by themselves. So like we're creating a whole new generation of like kids that feel confident in the kitchen as well. So it's, yeah, I think I love that the most.
Oh, I absolutely love it. You're really changing lives. Tell me about some of the feedback you've had from people who are also, who have issues with food insecurity, household budget. What sort of feedback are you getting from people in those situations?
Like excellent. It's been like it's been really awesome. There's been so much feedback about one, like really just cutting time down for people and cutting food budgets down, but also like giving them permission for certain things to be health food has been really great. I've got lots of feedback about that, saying thanks for letting this be health food, and like thanks for making recipes my kids will eat. And that, I think, because throughout the book as well, I've got a 10-year-old, and all of Huck's mates would have to come over and test all the recipes. And so all throughout the book, there's all their testimonials. And in the index, there's a 5-star rating by kids. So it's like this recipe has been tested by children, and it has 5-star reviews. So that I think I really, really adore that. But I love just being like, I get a lot of feedback about recipes being on constant repeat, which I think is awesome, where people like, there's like 12 jars of not so dull in the cupboard, and there's like 10 jars of the taco lentils. And that makes me really happy, because lentils are a hero food. They like have a substantial amount of protein, a substantial amount of fiber. They're so good for you. The leftovers, again, have a really great source of resistant starch, and they're cheap. And like, because there's a cost of living crisis, I've noticed in the supermarkets, they've all been on special. So they're like, we're talking $3 a kilo for lentils, and you need 300 grams to feed a family of 4. So it's like, the other day, we live in the inner north, and a kid said to me, "Oh, it's like I've heard about your cookbook. I'm so excited. I love cooking budget meals for my family." She's like, "I cooked dinner the other day, and it only cost $6 a person." And I was like, "Yeah, like my aim is to start trying to make recipes that are like $6 a family," and that's where lentils and legumes really shine, because they're like they're so nutritionally dense, and they're cheap, and they're they will feed a lot of people for very little money. And so I think that feedback is, I don't know, I get feedback every day, Dani. Like, I just also, because they're in libraries, and we have digital copies, and but a lot of I self-published, and I think the best thing about self-publishing is you can be as rogue as you want. So I was like writing the cookbook, and as I was writing the cookbook, I was releasing the recipes for free. And so the point of our social media is to release all of the recipes by the end of the year for free. The book is just a catalogue of stuff that we give away anyway.
Catie, you're really awesome. I've always thought it, but I'm just loving this chapter. It's just so great. Just a sense of purpose, and going to the actual cool kids table. It's really, really amazing. I want some porridge. I want some lentils. ASAP. And I love cold potatoes, so this is very good news. The potato rebrand is definitely speaking my language.
100%. I remember, I think I told you the butter was like the cultured butter is the hero food, and you're like, what? I'm like, yeah, it goes back to short chain fatty acids again, like buteic acid. Butter contains the highest amount of this short chain fatty acid, which is called buteic acid, which is conditionally essential for most people. And so butter can be, I think that's maybe when we bonded like many, many, many years ago.
Well, I probably told you then, like my grandmother lived to 101 and she had butter an inch thick on everything. So, you know the science and I'll just eat the butter. That's a good way to do it.
I told Will Stroud was in the shop one day and he was like, and I was telling him the story. I was like, oh, butter's a hero food. And he went to his car and he brought stuff back for me. And I was like, oh, that's so kind. And he brought me all this butter and cheese. And then the person in the shop was like, you don't know who that is. And I was like, I have no idea who that is. And they're like, oh, his name's on the butter. Because I was like, butter's a hero food. We bonded with that.
Classic. Catie, thanks so much for chatting. Look forward to volume 2. And thank you so much for all that you do. It really is so important.
Thanks, Dani. Your work's so important too. You're a legend. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Catie. This is Dirty Linen. I'm Dani Valent. We bring you untold stories from the food world. Real, raw, unafraid, hopeful. We're driven by a belief that food provides endless opportunities for learning, connecting, and creating the world we want to live in. Delicious, open-hearted, meaningful. If you know a story that needs telling, get in touch. Write to dirtyLinen@deepintheweeds.com.au. Thank you for listening.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.